Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Catron's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Catron's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Catron's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Catron's Glass, the clear choice.
Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, where we explore the art of finding balance in a chaotic world.
Join us as we delve into insightful conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience.
We're your hosts, Dan Schmidt and
Ben Spar.
Let's embark on a journey to live our best lives.
This is BeTempered.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, episode number
25.
We got some fall weather in the air. It's nice and cool and crisp, and this is the kind of weather I live for sure.
Officially football weather.
And we're getting close to tournament time and all those good things. You got fourth grade
Super Bowl this weekend at Valley View. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Valley View. Well, hey, we are excited today. We've got a special man in the studio who made the trek over from Dayton, Ohio, Coach Jim Place.
Well, Dan and Ben, I'm glad to be here. Very honored to be asked. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Excited.
Your name has came up numerous times in the past 20-some episodes, most recently with Marcus Colvin.
Well, he's special. What a special young man he is. I'm so proud to have the relationship with Marcus that I have. So Great guy.
And he spoke very highly of you. In fact, when we asked him, who, if he could pinpoint one person who was a mentor in his life, you were the name that came up.
I listened to your BeTempered, and when I heard that, it really touched me. You know, there's certain things that you do in life when you have a young man like Marcus Colvin that you can have an association with, and a little bit of a mentor kind of relationship, and then you see the success he has, not only in coaching, but as a person and a man and living his ideals. You say, boy, I had a little hand in that. It really is a special feeling. You're never too old for that.
No, that is an awesome feeling. And so what I'd like to do is you've got a wealth of experience, not only in coaching football and high school sports, but in educating young people. And then the things that you're doing today with some diversity training that we'll get into, character training and all the stuff that you're doing, which is amazing stuff. We'll get to that. But what I'd like to do, because I don't know, I'd like to start off from the beginning. Talk about your childhood growing up.
I'd love to, Dan. Well, first of all, we moved around a lot, and by the time I was in the 6th grade, I'd already been in 5 different grade schools, 3 states, so it just was the nature of my dad's work. And then 7th grade, we moved to Massillon, Ohio, which is absolutely football.
Mecca.
Yes, it is, and wonderful things happened for me. I went to Canton Central Catholic High School, and a couple of things have been unique about my high school that I'd like to talk about. First of all, when I was a sophomore, I was the backup tackle to a man named Alan Page. Now, you have to be my era to know Alan Page. But Alan went on to Notre Dame and then the pros, 14 years in the pros, 14 times All-Pro, first-year ballot NFL to the Hall of Fame. And what I'm most proud of, Alan was the first African-American to become a Supreme Court justice in the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
So he played for the Vikings and the Bears. But that's, you go through your playing career. I know you guys both played with guys you look back on and you go, hey, I played with that guy. And Alan was quite special. The other thing was my freshman year, the head coach was Coach McVeigh, who went on to become my college coach. And 2 of the assistants were Joey Golowski and Jerry Hanlon, who ended up being assistant coaches at UD. So that was great. And then my senior year, I was not highly recruited, but there were 4 of us that got recruited to come to the University of Dayton. And so 3 of my high school teammates joined me at UD. So went to Canton Central Catholic, loved every bit of that, lived in Massillon, of course, all the football, hotbed, and all that stuff. Yeah. And then I went to UD, and I can tell you this, Dan, the second I walked on the campus, I loved UD. I mean, for me, it was like a Disney World. It was like a unique experience. The people, the place, the charisma, the Marinist, just everything about UD. I can say the first day I was there and the day I graduated, I had the same feeling. I'd never had a day where I said, I don't love this place. Some people would be homesick and this, that, and the other thing. I just loved UD. Everything about it was a unique and wonderful experience for me. UD is still a very big part of my life right now. I mean, we got season tickets for men's football, men's basketball, women's basketball. We're very involved in different things. I'm a member of a group called the Golden Flyers that promote UD to senior citizens, the Golden Flyers. So went to UD. My head coach was John McVeigh, who I was fortunate enough to play for in high school. We had a separate freshman team. So we were scholarship school back then, Division I, and we had about 20 scholarship players, but about 30 non-scholarship players. Well, the neat thing, and we were not eligible for varsity, so no one could play varsity. But the unique thing about that was we formed a team. We got adjusted to college. I mean, we were really, all 50 of us were really close. Well, what was really special about that was, so the 20 scholarship guys moved up to the varsity the next year, and a couple of the walk-ons. But those other 30 guys became fraternity guys and engineers and pre-med. There wasn't one aspect of campus where I couldn't look and go, well, I got a friend there. I played freshman football with him.
Yeah.
So that family of freshman football turned into a family and the whole university. To this day, I have a group of friends over in Dayton who all went to UD together. Once a month, we have something called Boys Night Out. We have a group of about 30 guys, about half athletes, half not athletes, who all went to UD together, and we're now 56, 57 years into once a month meeting and keeping our friendship alive.
That's amazing.
So that's the kind of relationship was built. But one of the reasons I tell you that, guys, is yesterday I heard Neil Sullivan, the AD, speak to a group. And he described college athletics today with the transfer and the NIL and paying back the back payment that they have to make. And just, all the things going on, I thought that's so different than the experience that I had.
Oh, yeah.
My thought of transferring, maybe I'd be different, walking the day in my shoes, but the thought of transferring from UD would be the most foreign thing in my mind, especially after that freshman year where I made those bonds and those friendships and everything else. Now they're taking kids out of school the second semester of their high school season, which I think is just their senior year, just terrible, and taking them on campus. And just everything's gone away from the concept of student athlete and team and love your university, and they're just missing it. And, I know they're getting paid now, and they think that makes them happy, but the ripple effect and everything else, and it was just such a special time. Yeah. But anyway, freshman year, the varsity wasn't very good. Coach McVeigh's first year, they went 1-8-1. They scored 24 points in the season. The entire season. They were the lowest total in NCAA football.
And this is John McVeigh, the John McVeigh, whose grandson is
Sean McVeigh, the head coach of the Rams. Yeah. Right, exactly. So, and something neat also, I got a text 2 days ago from Timmy McVeigh. So Timmy is John's son, who is Sean's father. And Coach McVeigh has made the list of 25 finalists for the NFL Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
So
awesome.
That'd be neat if we had another UD guy into the NFL Hall of Fame. He made the list at 25. Of course, he was head coach of the New York Giants for a while, but then his main thing was he was the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers during a deep run of success. And here's a little known fact. So a freshman with us, he went to Notre Dame for a semester and didn't make it well. His name is Eddie DeBartolo Jr., and Eddie DeBartolo Jr. is in the NFL Hall of Fame. He was the owner of the San Francisco 49ers, and he spent 2 years with us, and we're all Northeast Ohio guys. I'm from Massillon. He's from Youngstown, and he got to know Coach McVeigh a little bit. And then when he owned the 49ers, he, because of his relationship with him at UD, hired Coach McVeigh to be the general manager.
Oh, wow.
And then the rest is history with those two together going on, winning all those Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But it was neat. We had a tribute to Coach McVeigh about 2 years ago. Coach McVeigh was deceased, but we called Eddie, and I said, Eddie, and he said, Jim Place. I said, Eddie, I got for all your success, I'm glad you still remember me. And he says, how's Chuck Musey? How's Donnie Reagan? How's all the guys? And he remembered every guy. And the days, he said, those were great times. He went to UD 2 years, then he went back and actually graduated from Notre Dame.
Okay.
But he's a UD guy, and he considers himself a UD guy. And he made a videotape saluting Coach McVeigh.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was neat. So then at UD, I had the opportunity to have tremendous coaches. So Coach McVeigh was the head coach, went on, and we already talked about his success. My defensive line coach was George Perlis. George Perlis went on to become the defensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers and won 4 Super Bowl rings with the Steelers. He then went on to become the head coach of Michigan State. Defensive back coach was Wayne Fonts, who went on to become the head coach of the Detroit Lions. Yeah. The linebacker coach was Jimmy Gruden, who is the father of John Gruden. And Jimmy went on to Notre Dame and then in the NFL. And ESPN actually did a special on the relationship of the Gruden family and the McVeigh family. So, all these overlapping things. On the offensive side of the ball was Jerry Hanlon, who went on and became a legendary assistant coach for 40 years at Michigan. I mean, every head coach kept handling. Yeah. And the offensive backfield coach was Tom Moore. Tom Moore is 90 years old. Colts. He's still coaching.
Yeah.
He's considered the greatest assistant coach in the NFL. He's coaching down in Tampa Bay now. He was with Peyton Manning with the Colts and everything. And so he was the offensive coach. So it was neat. We had a reunion about 20 years ago, and all those guys came back. Every one of them. Fonz and all, they couldn't come to Coach McVay's reunion because a lot of them were in bad health. Perkins was gone. Yeah. So tremendous coaching, tremendous influence on me to be able to work with men like that. But the nice thing is, moved up to varsity as a sophomore, and we went 8-2. So the biggest turnaround at that time in NCAA history. And then we had 2 more good years. So just a wonderful, wonderful experience at UD and majoring in education. And I can't talk enough about how much I love UD and what it did for me.
Yeah, you can feel it. And I resonate those same feelings because I remember as a senior in high school, I had some opportunities to go to different places, and I really wanted to go to Miami is where I wanted to go. That's where my high school coach had played. And that's where I felt like I could play. They offered a preferred walk-on. Yep. Well, I thought I was better than that. Went to a couple other places, and the last place I went was UD. Exact same feeling when I walked on campus, and I think it probably helped. Coach Kelly was recruiting me. So when the head coach is recruiting you, you kind of feel like you're a big deal or whatever as an 18-year-old kid, even though I wasn't. But when I walked on campus, I had that exact same feeling of this is it.
Yep.
This is where I want to be. It just felt right. That it was the same type of person that I was, just good people, looking to work hard and to be successful. So I resonate those feelings from the university.
Dan, something to share with you. A common friend we have is Big Paulie Conradson, who's one of my son's best friend. He and Jake just set up in Milwaukee. But Paulie has a son that's a senior, and he's an outstanding academic student. He's looking at UD, and Paulie said, I hope he goes to UD. And you know why? I said, why, Paulie? He said, everybody's happy at UD.
Yeah.
When you go to UD, everybody's just happy. What better sales pitch can you have than that? We're happy at UD.
That's right. That's
Great place and tremendous influence on my life.
Yeah, for sure. So you've got tremendous coaching through college. You just talked about that. I assume, and you'll tell us, that's what led you into teaching and coaching.
Absolutely. I knew at an early age I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I mean, I was in 7th grade. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And Dan, the one thing that I'm 77 now, I look back and I reflect on this. I am very fortunate in that I can tell you this. I was put on this earth to be a high school football coach. I mean, there was nothing else that you say, well, what about doing it? What about this? No. I was doing that, especially a high school football coach in urban settings. That's why I was put on this earth. And it's a tremendous blessing to look back on your life and say, this is what I was supposed to do. I did it. It brought me tremendous satisfaction. It brought me tremendous value. It brought me tremendous relationships. So, I was able to do what I was put on this earth supposed to do. And that's a wonderful feeling.
That's awesome. So what kept you in Dayton?
Well, so I graduate from college. Well, first of all, I sort of thought I had a shot at the pros. I signed a contract to play down in the North-South All-American game in Miami, Florida. And was all set to do that. And last game of my senior year, I blew my knee completely out. Total blowout of my knee. And I was done. But then that spring, Coach McVay called me in and said, listen, Jim, why don't you stay in Dayton and coach? I've got 4 different jobs for you to choose from. Which one of these jobs? He said, I'll send you out on interviews. But he did that for all of us. Called us in, got me a job. My first coaching was Kettering Alter. So I stayed there, and then I just stayed in Dayton. But at that time, there were jobs in Dayton. We all stayed. I mean, probably half my teammates stayed. Remember all those friends I told you about that I made that weren't football players? They all stayed. And we've had a 50 or I guess we're approaching 60-year relationship of a group of about 30 best friends. I mean, we have a phenomenal relationship with each other. I never thought about leaving Dayton. One nice thing, my wife set up a little rule with me, and she said, Jim, you can coach anywhere you want, anywhere, at any level, anytime, but we're never moving. She said, I'm not going to get on that thing where I had a couple opportunities to go to college. Right. And she said, we're not going to do that. She said, we had a chance at UC, we had a chance at Ohio State, honestly. And she said, fine, but you're going to commute. We're not moving. And get on that rotation where you move from Arizona to New Mexico to New England. So, and that was a tremendous blessing because that was what I wanted anyhow. I talked about how I feel about the University of Dayton. I feel the same way about the Dayton area. Yeah. I mean, this is where this is where I'm supposed to be. I made a lot of friends. I think it's a unique place to live. I just really, really enjoy being a Daytonian now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
And
great place.
I mean, that's unique. So was your wife, was she from the Dayton area too?
So my wife is from Urbana, Ohio. Okay. She's 3 years younger than me. She's a UD graduate. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life, I saw your questions here. Say, what are the greatest factors in your life? Well, there's no doubt meeting Joni Kearns. And her father was a judge up in Urbana. And he's judge for Southwest Ohio. He's on the Court of Appeals. But you know how everybody, if I ask both you guys, Ben and Dan, what's the greatest influence? You would say your wife. And, it's probably about 70, 80% of that is true. Mm-hmm. For me, it's 100% true. I mean, if my college buddies were sitting here, they would all shake their heads and say, oh, yeah, he'd be in prison or he'd be a derelict. If he hadn't met Joni, he'd be in a totally different life. I mean, it's not 80% true. It's 100% true. I mean, she's got all the grace and dignity and class, and she took sort of this rough, kind of wild, crazy guy and put the polishing touches on it. Not that I'm all that refined now, but I'm certainly not the guy I was coming out of Massillon, Ohio. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's all responsible to her.
Yeah. So you're coaching, you're teaching, you're at Kettering Altar. You go to many different schools, and you talk about that urban environment. Why the urban environment as far as coaching and teaching? Why do you feel like that was the place for you?
Dan, I don't have an explanation for it, but it was. I just knew, I enjoyed everywhere I coached. I mean, I coached like Beaver Creek. Loved 6 years at Beaver Creek. Tremendous thing there. But when you're coaching at Beaver Creek, most of the players have a dad, have a mom, have a family life, have a lot of stable things. When you coach in the urban situations like Withrow, Hamilton, Middletown, Dayton, Ponus, there's 18 urban school districts in the state of Ohio. I coached in 4 of them. You're more than just a coach. You take on a role of a much higher relationship with the players. And I found at a very early part of my career, I like that. That was really, really important to me now. It presents some challenges, but yet that was what I was made for. And I developed a couple of techniques and systems to coaching in urban districts that was a little different, but it was very rewarding and very successful as far as the development of players. I'm not talking about winning and losing,
right?
But how you got to get the kids to where thought you were making a little bit of effect on them. But just very early in my career, I realized that's something that I wanted to be and where I wanted to be, and I basically did it.
Yeah. So you were not only a coach and an educator, but you were probably a father figure.
Well, that's definitely the truth. The male role model that they need. There's a lady named Ruby Payne who's considered the foremost expert in the country on working with students from lower socioeconomic background. And her main theory is if you're going to be a coach, you have to be a certain role model. You have to role model middle class values, how you dress, how you talk, how you walk. So we always did that. And that was something that I put tremendous emphasis on. This is the way I'm going to be. And it worked.
Yeah.
Very rewarding for me, and I think very rewarding for the young men that I got the opportunity to coach.
Yeah, and I in preparation for this, you've been on a couple other podcasts, and there's some YouTube videos of you out there, and that the one thing that jumped out at me is that you said in one of the podcasts was, I want to have an impact on young people.
Yeah. Being a coach is an opportunity. I tell people, what you do with it's up to you. You can coach football, as simple as that, or you can coach young men. If you just want to go in and draw plays and X's and O's, you have that opportunity to do it. But a real opportunity in coaching is the effect that you can have on young men. And it's tremendous. They're at a formative part of their age, especially in some of these situations. They don't have strong role models in their lives. And the effect that you can have on them, you can have a victory every day. You walk and you get in that car every night and drive home and go, I did something good today. I had a positive effect, and you can see it in the kids' eyes and the way they act and everything like that. And, it's like I said, it's the reason I was put on this earth was to do that. And, that's a blessing that I think for everybody can look back on their lives and say, is this why I was put on the earth? It was for me.
And you say that, and it's awesome to hear that. But with that blessing, how many challenges did you have to work through on a daily basis with maybe parental issues, like we just talked about with, Ben and I having our little kids' basketball tryout last week, and we had to make some cuts, and how difficult that was for me, and these are 10-year-old little boys. Talk about some of those difficulties that you faced, but from those difficulties, what you learned from it.
Sure. Well, anytime that you're in a position, you got to make decisions. Somebody's going to like the decision. Somebody's not going to like the decision. It can be as simple as who's going to play or what call, calling a play at the end of the game, who gets the ball. And there's all kind of decisions you have to make. I think, though, that all of that sort of falls into the secondary category. Mm-hmm. And the primary category is, how am I going to treat young men? What's the system we have for it? Dan and Ben, something that I did very early in my career, I developed what's called a philosophy book, and it started with 16 pages, and it was who I am. There's not one word in there about what plays I'm going to run or X's and O's. It's how I'm going to relate to players and how I'm going to deal with young men and how we're going to treat the young men in our program and what we expect from myself, what we expect from assistant coaches. And every year before the season, I would sit down with my staff in July, and I say, okay, this is the way this program is going to be run. If you're with us, stay with us. But if you're not, quit right now. I want with no hard feelings. But this is the way young men are. We don't swear. We never criticize the person. We always criticize the performance. We have this philosophy: know the young man, win the young man. That every young man has a story, and your role as a coach is to learn that young man's story. And once that happens, everything else is going to fall together. So I had that philosophy book of 16 pages, and we made sure that we stayed on that. And I look back on my coaching career, and it was a real simple formula. If I did what I believed in my philosophy, everything worked. If I didn't, things didn't work. So to answer your question as far as making major decisions, I would sit down and I'd take a step back and I'd go, what's Jim Play supposed to do? What's my philosophy? And and there's hard times, but I'll give you an example of, here's one philosophy is, a senior and a sophomore even, who do you play? Well, most people say play the sophomore because he's going to get better, and by the end of the season, he'll be a better player than the senior. I played the senior. And it was part of my philosophy. I would sit down with parents, and I'm going to say, listen, yeah, your son, these two players are even, but I'm just going to tell you straight up. My philosophy is I'm going to stick with my senior until now the day that I make a decision, go, the sophomore's better, he's got to play. Right. The best player has to play. That is a golden rule. Once you leave that and make excuses, well, this kid, this, and the guy. But, I think you have to have a philosophy. There are so many times when the kids are even, and there's a gray area. And so you develop a philosophy, you stick with it, and the whole thing is true. I think also if parents came in and were complaining about this or that, and I had very few of that. Right. But you would just sit down and say, look, am I treating that young man the way I think he should be treated, and being fair and treating him as an individual, knowing his story? And you put your head on the pillow at night and say, you can't keep everybody happy. Yeah. I did have one philosophy, and that was, you're going to make 4 enemies a year. When you are the head football coach, you're going to, if you don't, you're not making decisions. Right. And it's just part of the deal. You make 4 decisions. So that's one thing. I was a head coach at 9 different schools, and every one of those was the reason I left. There was the reason I went to the new school, and it never was whatever, except for one. I made one mistake. But excuse me. The reason I tell you that is that you just got to make decisions, and you live with them. And you make 4 enemies. You go to a new job, you don't have any enemies anymore. So sometimes it was refreshing. There's nothing wrong with changing jobs every once in a while. Yeah. So, but not a lot of terrible. I'll tell you one story about a parent. So I had a great running back named Javon Ringer. Yeah. Javon Ringer, Michigan State. As great a player as he was, at one time he was second in the voting in the Heisman, went on to play for Tennessee Titans, and tremendous high school football player, better person than football player. I mean, really? a better person football player. But the story doesn't relate to Javon Ringer. I had another running back on the team who was very, very good, a really good running back, and but I had him on defense because he wasn't going to get the ball, the number 2 guy, and he could impact on defense. For 3 straight years, his mom came in and said, Coach Place, I want to talk to you. If you gave the ball to my son as much as you did Ringer, he'd be Ringer, and he'd be getting all these honors. And we'd sit there for an hour, and I would listen to what she said, and I would finally just say one thing. I said, I've listened to every word you've said, but I got to tell you something. I think Javon's better. I mean, that's my decision. I think she's better. And all 3 years, the mom stood up, gave me a hug, said, Coach Place, I love you. She said, now this is a little different. She said, at least you listen to me, Coach. That's all I can ask you for. You got to believe in what you believe, said, but at least you sat here and listened. I think as long as you treat people with respect, they're going to treat you with respect. And so I never had really terrible parent problems. Never really happened.
Well, that's a testament to your leadership.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
I think it's about being transparent, but being a leader and saying, the philosophy book, this is where I stand. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to do. And at the end of the day, I'm going to care for each and every one of those kids. And that's what you did. And I think that's where the respect comes from.
Well, thank you.
We were talking about just last week how we had our little kids basketball tryout, 4th grade basketball tryout. And I was telling you, we had 10 kids on the team last year. I was hoping only 10 would show up. Here comes 15 kids. And it kills me to have to cut a kid. But, at the end of the day, we just want to keep 10 kids because it makes things simpler as far as practice and all that goes with basketball. And one little kid in particular, just the sweetest kid, did everything last year we asked of him. Not the greatest basketball player in the world, but just a fantastic kid. I mean, hard not to love him. And so ended up cutting him and talked to his parents, and I lost sleep the night before because I was so worried about this is a 10-year-old kid I'm caring about, But when
you care.
But when you care about these kids and you know how it could potentially affect them in a negative way, but hopefully they learn from it and get better because of it. Last night we're at my daughter's soccer game, and this little young man, this little boy comes up, sits down next to me, and just starts talking to me, and I just said, "Thank you, Jesus." It was the biggest sigh of relief because here I was concerned that this kid was going to hate me and all this stuff, and just the sweetest little boy.
Well, Dan and Ben, I think one of the hardest things in coaching is this: you got a young man, and he does everything right. He, for 4 years, has worked. He never misses a workout. He does everything right. He's a great student, great kid, great person. The other young man that's maybe on the border a little bit. He misses some practices. He's not that coachable. Maybe gets a little bit in trouble at school. So then you go into senior year, and player B is better than player A. And you got to call player A, and the kid looks at you in his eyes. He goes, "Coach Place, I've given you everything. I mean, tell me one thing that I haven't done right. Why is he starting?" And you got to say these words, "Because we think he's better."
Yeah.
And once you start saying, well, this is a great kid, so we should play him, or, oh my goodness, the mom and dad are such great people and they're loyal and they're grads. And, you sit down and you make that hard decision. You just go, look, you got to, once you bend even a little bit from, sometimes there's circumstances. If this other player broke rules or this, that, or the thing, but as long as he met the minimum requirements and he's the better player, you walk out of the office and you go, "Oh, I didn't like that meeting. That was tough," where you told the first player, "You're not going to start Friday night." The other guy start, and he tells you all these things, and you agree with everything he says, and then it's the tough part of coaching.
That's the burden of leadership.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
But I'm sure that
decisions have to be made.
And that philosophy book probably helps you a lot, though, because if you sit down with your coaches and you're building that culture right out of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have that base foundation. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you have that plan in place and you guys follow it all season. And what'd you say happened?
Yeah.
Successful season, right?
Yeah.
You steer away from it. And, I love the philosophy book so much.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. So for the last 40, so let's say I started a philosophy book 40 years ago.
Yep.
Anytime I hear something, so I listened to your podcast and I wrote down something that Marcus said. Mm-hmm. If I go to church on Sunday and I hear something in homily, my philosophy book is now 120 pages. Now, a lot of it's redundant and overlapping and this, that, and the other thing. But if there's a saying or anything, and I read it cover to cover twice a year, and I just keep saying to myself, be Jim Place. Be that person. As long as you be that person, you can put your head on the pillow at night and say, well, I made some decisions today, but right or wrong, as long as I was true to myself, I'm okay. But, you look back and you say, well, you know what? I wasn't Jim Place in that situation. I didn't handle that situation the way that I wanted to, and I didn't show the person enough respect that I should have, and simple as that. That's where you run into problems.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the word that keeps coming to my mind, and this is something that you do right now, I think to this day, is character.
Well, yes. Uh-huh.
You are a character. You're not a football coach.
Yeah.
You're not an educator. You are a character coach.
That's
Talk about character.
Well, so here's what, and I'm glad you asked me about that. Here's something I was on. So when I was at Hamilton, I was a CJ 15 years, but I had to go back into public schools. And I was very picky about, every year my wife would say, listen, old man, you got to go back to school because you're not going to get retirement. I didn't have a full retirement. Mm-hmm. And I said, I never let money drive my career, though. I coached where I wanted to coach. Everywhere I went for a reason. But I was at CJ 15 years, but I knew I had to go back in and get at least 4 more years in public school just to qualify for a retirement. So they called from Hamilton, and they said, Coach, we got a problem here. You know, we were 0-10, and I think it was 1-19 for the previous 2 years. If there's a fight in school, it's football players. Saturday school is loaded with football players. They said, can you win football games for us? I said, I've never made a promise on that. I've never predict what game. I said, but what I will do is bring a character-driven program. We have a definite system for it. We have a character card that I could talk about that in a few minutes, where our players' character, in theory, they carry the character card in their wallet, 724. We tell our players, never tell anybody on a football team. They'll tell you you're a football player. Tell them you're part of a program. And that's where the character comes in. And that character card is all about that. And so we had the character cards. Well, I went in for the interview, and they said, well, we have this job for you. You will be our head football coach, but you'll also be the drug and alcohol coordinator. It was a federal program. I can tell you, in all honesty, that was a very easy job. I mean, I came home to my wife. I said, hey, we're going to go 4 years at Hamilton. We're going to turn the thing around. I'm going to coach through this and retire and everything else. Well, we put the character card in, and after the first 9 weeks, the superintendent called me and said, you're not going to do the drug and alcohol thing anymore. I've just promoted you to assistant superintendent in charge of character development for the entire school system. And I said, well, and she's a brilliant, brilliant woman named
With
Mrs.
success
Baker.
comes greater challenge.
Well,
Right.
yeah. I said, I have to tell you, for the whole school system, she said, yeah, we have 19 buildings. We have 9,000 students. I said, well, I need to tell you, grade school kids scare me. Elementary school students scare me. And I think middle school kids are nuts. They're out of there. That age group is absolutely lunatic. I work with young men in high school. That's pretty much what I do. She said, and she believed in me more than I did. So for the next 4 years then, I was the director of character development for the Hamilton City School District. And it was a phenomenal position. I went in every day, and I'd been a guidance counselor in previous positions. But I went in every day and did nothing but character. And the first thing I did, I learned from Coach McVeigh as I set up a staff. I said, well, okay, I want to have a character team that can help me. So they were my assistant coaches in character. When I left Hamilton, I loved my staff at Hamilton, R.V. Crouch and Mook Dole and a bunch of guys like that. Nate Moore, now at Massillon. Nate coached, Nate coached for us at Hamilton. But I had my character. Nate was on my character team too.
Okay.
And so he was a consistent coach. And but I hated leaving my character team as much as I hated leaving my assistant coaches at Hamilton Big Blue. So I did that for 4 years. And my mentor, so when I was a junior in college, our academic advisor was from Massillon. His name was Dr. Gene Mullen. He was my mentor my entire career. I'll get off on a side tangent here. My first job was at Kettering Alter as assistant coach, and Gene said, I just registered for 2 classes, get down here and pay for these classes. I said, oh, no, Doc, I'm done taking classes. I got my degree. He said, no, you're registered, get it. And he registered me in my class. I got my master's a year and a half. And everybody said, how did you get that master's? I said, well, I was a horrible student, but Doc Mullen just kept signing me up for classes until I got my master's. And then he kept signing me up for classes, and I got further degrees and everything else. So anyway, we'll go back to Hamilton. So for 4 years, well, Doc asked me to speak he was still working at UD, said, will you come and speak to my classes? And then he said, Jim, I've got these workshops that I do. I'd like you to take them over. So what I do now, Dan and Ben, is I teach graduate classes to teachers, and the graduate classes deal with character education. I have 12 different classes where a teacher gets recertified. They have to take X number of graduate hours. All the classes used to be at UD, and they were live. Now I've gone virtual. I'm through Colorado State University.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of what the graduate classes are. I teach a class on positive strategies to prevent bullying. I really believe that there's a system where we can have a tremendous effect on reducing bullying in schools. I teach a class in mental health. So tremendous problem in schools today. I teach a class in working with students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and there's a unique to understanding the uniqueness of students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that you've got to understand. I teach a class in developing good attitude in students. So I teach 12 different classes, and I'm very proud to say I've had over 7,000 students take one of my classes in the last 14 years, and we're still teaching them now. My daughter Carolyn and my sister Janet work with me. My wife Joni helps me, and it's very rewarding because not only am I doing this, it's all virtual now, so it's become pretty easy, to be honest. But again, it goes back to that thing. I really feel like I'm having an effect on teachers. We don't let anyone teach it, and we have 90 guest speakers, so our classes are all taped now. You watch 8 hours of video, and then you do projects on it. We have 90 different guest presenters, but we don't let anyone present who is an actual classroom teacher. Okay. So you have to walk in and say, I do this, and it works. No theory, no philosophies, no research, nothing. Everything's 100% practical. And it's the reason why the teachers like it so much, because they can use it the next day. But also, it has an effect on the students. So here it is, a tremendous need for character, as simple as that. I have a philosophy. I think character education, I say this, character education is not on the plate, it is the plate. In other words, it's not something you say, okay, let's put in a character education program. Character education has to filter through the entire school. Yeah. I can walk into a school and tell you within 15 minutes, here's the culture of this school. They care about the kids like the teachers like the kids like the administration like the teachers. Schools have culture, and that culture starts with their commitment to character education. Yeah. Everybody can provide the academic learning. That's something that happens in all schools. But do you care about the kids? Do you go the extra mile? So I teach those classes, and that is very, very rewarding to me, and it's something that I think I'll turn over to Carolyn. My daughter will take it over when I retire. And so I was very fortunate that I just fell into that. Dr. Mullen got me into it, and we added one class a year, to now we're up to 12 classes. We've leveled off. And 12 different classes, and got students from all over the country now. Yeah. So that keeps me busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah,
but it's rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Character is so important, and I think there's a loss of character, and anytime you see a failure in a school system or in a business, it comes back to character.
Absolutely,
the character of the people.
Sure, it does.
Another thing that you're doing, talk about diversity training.
So I'll talk about the background of that. So the day after George Floyd was murdered, I'm driving back from Memphis, and a friend of mine for 45, 50 years named Al Powell, who's a legendary coach at Dunbar High School, called me, and he's crying. He said, Coach, he says, this country is going to be torn apart. He said, the hatred in this country on every side and every dimension, he said, get ready for this country to be absolutely torn apart. He said, why don't we take our very small part of the world, high school football in Dayton, Ohio, and make it different, and make it a place where racial relations are good, and do everything that we can do as a team, he and I together. And so since that time, that was about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, we've come up with a number of projects. We have a coaches seminar every year. We have a student summit every year. We have about 400 students come together, and they talk about it. But the big thing we do is we have a 7-on-7, of which Eden High School participates. Yeah. Yep. But 7-on-7 works this way. We had 64 teams last year, 2,500 young men, 400 coaches involved. And what we do is we have 5 sites. UD is one of them. CJ, Centerville, Fairborn, and Stebbins. So at a site, we will put a team of 4 teams together. One team is all minority, one team all white, and then 2 teams that are usually diverse. Okay. So that last year, when I said we had 2,600 students, we had 1,300 black students, we had 1,300 white students. Okay. And what they do is they'll do a round-robin 7-on-7, 40 minutes against each team. So 2 hours of round-robin 7-on-7 football. But then we go for an hour of a social justice seminar. And what we mean by social justice seminar is number one, we challenge them to look at race relations. We challenge them. We start by talking about how can football create better relations between races. And sometimes we talk about you have to get uncomfortable before you get comfortable. And how can you as a football player use football to promote better relations between the races? And the way we do it is we start out with a speaker for about 20 minutes, and we've had some great speakers. Ickey Woods, remember him? The Bengals. He's one of our speakers, and we've got all kinds of different speakers that speak. We've got all these 5 different sites, so a lot of different speakers. So they speak for 15 or 20 minutes. Then we put them in groups, and we give them a list of questions. And they're very simple questions. They're not overly challenging, but just simple. It is, do you think that sports can promote greater acceptance of people of different races? How can you go back to your school and be a agent for promoting better race relations in your school? If you go to a school, like we would match up a school like Dunbar and Valley View, and the Dunbar kids go, we don't ever talk to white kids. And the Valley View kids go, we don't ever talk to black kids. And, how can we get situations where you can meet each other? And so from that, we've had situations where, an example, Springboro has Dayton opponents come down for a 7-on-7 every year, and then they have a cookout afterwards, and the kids get together and talk.
Okay.
Centerville and Trotwood had a scrimmage every year, and afterwards they have a social justice session after the scrimmage where they all sit in groups and they feed them and they talk. So a lot of good things are happening, and really one of my basic beliefs that Al Powell and I both have is we believe contact brings acceptance. The more you can bring people together, the more you can get them to get to know each other, the more that's going to have an acceptance. And, we don't believe we're going to change the world, but we think here's one very small area that's very important to us, high school football in the Miami Valley. And we're going to try to influence that as best we can.
Yeah.
The good news is that there's a young man named Ricky Powers who was an All-American at Michigan and played a lot of years of pro ball. He's coaching in Cleveland, so we think we're going to have 16 teams up in Cleveland next year also.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, it's really expanding, and it's at the end of the day, Al Powell and I sit down, and a guy named Johnny Fantuzzo helps us now also, and we just say, boy, that was good.
Yeah.
And the kids, there's a whole lot more in football, but use football to bring kids together. Yeah. So thanks for asking me about that. That is something very special, and I look forward to doing that as long as I can.
Well, again, it goes back to a testament to you with your philosophy book,
thank you.
with your character training, the diversity training, all this. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make young people better because they're going to be leaders someday.
Yeah.
The thing I keep coming back to in my mind is, you talk about your philosophy book and character, and what you're trying to do is build young men, and you're not talking about wins and losses.
No.
And I think it relates to those out there in business. If you're focused on making money, you're not going to make money. No. But if you focus on your customer, you focus on taking care of your employees, that'll come.
Absolutely.
And I think the awesome thing for you is you coached for 40 plus years, right?
48 years.
48 years. You had some tremendous success.
Well, yeah.
You had a state championship.
Yes,
you had $1 million team I read about.
Did. Yeah, that's right. So you did your homework.
So kind of talk about those two teams, not necessarily about how good they were and what they meant to you at that time and the success that they had, but what they mean to you now.
Okay. Hey, Dan, I'm going to throw a tangent at you too, though, and Ben. Eaton High School is an example. That 7-on-7 tournament, Coach Davis brings his team every year. He doesn't just bring his team, he's all in. In other words, when they get off the bus, you can tell that he has already told his team, listen, today's more than football. You just, you see the way they perform, the commitment to it. When they come into the after session, their eyes are glued on that speaker. And that's a neat, I sit back and I see coaches like Coach Davis that bring that commitment saying, listen, here's my team. We want to be part of this. Yeah. And that's really special. We're up to 64 teams. The same thing, we got teams from Detroit, Toledo, about 10 from Columbus, a whole bunch from Cincinnati. But to see the coaches buy in and say, that guy's good. He's going to go back and he's going to talk to his players. This isn't just a day that he comes to the 7-on-7. He's going to carry that out. Yeah. Okay. So to answer your question about those two teams, how about the state championship team? Yeah. You talk about fun. But I want to tell you a story about that. Okay. So when the year before we won, so we wanted in 02 and 01, we made the Final Four. And we were playing a game up in Springfield, and we lost on the last play of the game. And, boy, that was heartbreaking. And then Columbus Waterston went on to win the state championship. So we thought we were one play away from a state championship in 01, and we had tremendous talent coming back. But something that happened was you have a 30-day dead period where you can't work out with them, really have no football contact with them at all. So I'm in my office, and I hear, and every senior walks in and goes, they said, Coach, we're going to win the state next year. I said, you know what, that's my goal every year, and you guys have the talent to do it. We've had other teams have the talent to do it. I said, you know how to do it, our character card. You guys go all in on the character card, and we will win the state championships. They said, Coach, you can forget about everything. You don't have to coach. Said, we will not only make sure character rules our team, character will rule this whole school. We will make sure that this school has a culture of character. Now, we had 400 males, 120 of them played football. So we had a pretty strong, that's a freshman and varsity to combine. Mm-hmm. So we had a pretty strong influence on the team. They said,
this is at Chaminade
Julienne.
Yeah.
They said, but we want you to do something, Coach. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Said, we want you to work harder than you've ever worked a team in past. Said, if we're running conditioning and you go to put your whistle in the mouth, we want you to pull it down and condition us more. So when you draw up the practice schedule, we want you to tear it up and add 15 minutes. Said, Coach, will you push us harder than any team that you've ever pushed? I said, you're asking for it, right? There were times that year in practice where I would go, I'm approaching one of those crazy coaches where you hear about and go, this guy's nuts. He's working kids so hard. But I thought, they asked me for it, and they wanted it. Here's the unique thing about that team, Dan and Ben. So you start off with an off-season weightlifting. We couldn't start until January 1st because we went all the way into almost December with December with the state championship. We went Final Four. So in my weight book, you have in the weight room you have a check, means that they came to the workout. Okay, an E means they were excused, and no player ever had to tell me why. All they had to do was stop in my office and say, Coach, I can't make weights today. And I told them, don't tell me the reason. I trust you. I don't want to hear whatever. Right. But as long as you're excused, but if it was a circle, it meant you weren't there and you weren't excused. And that really upset me because, I was in school. I was in the cafeteria every day. You had a chance to tell me, Coach, I can't make it today. A circle. Well, you would look at that book at the end of the season and go, that's a pretty good predictor what kind of team you're going to have. Mm-hmm. If you're loaded with checks and E's, pretty good season. 24 seniors on that next team, the state championship team. Here's the amazing thing, okay? No circles. Not one circle. But here's what's really amazing, not one E.
Oh,
wow.
Not one senior missed one workout.
Wow.
Summer vacations, they told their moms and dads, I can't go. Now, here's the other thing. That team was loaded with sophomores and juniors. Only 9 seniors started on that team. We had 13 seniors didn't start, but not one of them missed a workout.
Wow.
So if you say, how do you win a state championship? You get the kids to buy in.
Yeah.
I mean, that was phenomenal. That's why, so it's December 2nd, 2002. I'm standing on the 50-yard line, probably 40 or 50 in Massillon, Ohio.
Yeah.
Massillon Tiger Brown State, the town I grew up in.
Yeah.
They got these questions. First question I always remember said, Coach, is this the greatest moment of your life? Well, I have my wife and my son to my right. I have my 2 daughters to my left. And I said, well, I hope you're qualified. I said, my greatest professional moment. I mean, my family is our greatest moment in my life. Let's make sure we stay that.
Right.
But then I looked over and I saw the kids holding the trophy. And I said, this is by far the greatest professional moment of my life because they earned that trophy. Yeah. That trophy didn't fall in because Ringer was a sophomore.
Yeah.
He gained 249 yards in the state championship game. And that was huge. I mean, give the ball to Ringer. But anyway, to know that those kids said that back in a year, they made it happen, and it happened. As simple as that. I'll tell you another story about the state championship team. Here's another philosophy I have. You're going to have 4 crises a year where you're going to say, I quit. Go home to your wife and go, I'm not going back to work tomorrow. I can't do this anymore. And you talk about challenges. We talked about that early in the presentation. So I really believe that, and I thought that, and I told our team that, listen, every year we're going to have 4 crises, and how we handle those crises are going to determine our success or failure. And I, as the head coach, set the example for the crises. It's going to determine it. Well, we're sailing along. We're 9-0. Everything is going great, and we had a crisis. I'll tell you about it. We had a young man that was a ward of the state. He came to Chaminade Julienne, and as a sophomore, he was a challenge. They let him back in, just by the hair of his chinny chin chin, he got back in. But they said, any more problems, and he's out. So he goes for the first 9 weeks, he's perfect. And he ended up playing for West Virginia, so that's kind of talented young man he is. The night before our 10th game, he did something that wasn't very smart, and the principal called me up and said, I'm expelling him. I said, the young man had 100 places on his body where his birth mother put cigarette burns out on him. He had been in 14 different foster homes. It was one of the things where you just go, this is the greatest success story I ever heard. All the parents called the principal and said, don't expel the young man. He did something stupid. The principal just said, listen, we've got standards. We told him, if you cross that line one more time, We can't have you. So he got expelled. That happened. I got that call on Thursday night. So normally my philosophy is 4 crises, how I handle them, how the team will handle them. And I'm not taking, we lost week 10, and I'm not taking anything away from the opponent. They beat us. But I stood up to give the pep talk before the game, and I just stood there and cried. I couldn't talk. I couldn't cry. I couldn't coach. I was so hurt about the loss of that young man. And it wasn't winning and losing, because Ringer was still a sophomore.
Yeah.
And so, but the other young man was our feature back. So that's how good we were.
Yeah.
So he got expelled. So I didn't handle that well. But it comes game night. We go up to Massillon for the game night. And we've already had one major crisis. We're warming up, and the kicker gets hurt. He trips over his block and gets hurt. So our doctor, Steve Kleinitz, comes up and goes, the punter kicker's gone. He can't play tonight. I said, what happened? He tripped over his block. I said, oh, my gosh. I went to the assistant and said, who's the backup kicker? He said, we don't have one. I said, who's the backup punter? He said, we don't have one. I mean, this is state championship coach. I'm not that prepared. We did, but the reality was, in other words, we didn't have one good enough to do it.
Right.
I said, well, then we got something that we're going to have to do. We're going to onside kick every time that we kick off, and we're going to fake punt every time we punt. Well, the nice thing was we didn't punt the whole game. I mean, we scored 48 points, so we never punt. But we did a bloop kick, onside kick, and everything with one of our linebackers. He sprayed it all over. So that worked out well. But then the second thing that happened was our quarterback, Anthony Turner, who had a great career at Bowling Green, is now the athletic director at CJ.
Okay.
And he's a great quarterback. About the 4th play of the game, the doctor brings over, his wrist looked like a tennis ball inside of it, a hemo something or other. And the doctor said, he can play. He said, he just can't throw the ball anymore. I said, oh, well, okay. I said, well, I called the team together. Well, even after the kicking situation, I called the team together. I go, crisis 2. We didn't handle crisis. I didn't handle crisis 1. Let's handle crisis 2. Didn't make a wave. Kids didn't even blink. Anthony's hand called the whole team together. Said, Anthony can't throw the ball anymore, so we're going to give the ball to Ringer every play. Well, 249 points, 249 yards, 48 points later, a state championship. I said, this is how the things work. And, you know, the tremendous truth to that, like you talking about, Dan, the relationship in sports and athletics, hey, and life and business, you're going to have crises. How you handle crisis is what determines it. So that was something about the state championship team that was really neat. You know, all the things that went behind it, and the game night and winning that state championship, and how wonderful it was to see and go, they won it.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. It didn't fall into our laps, and all of a sudden we said, well, we got Ringer and Harrison and Turner and Ryan Patrick, all these, Mike Jones, all these great players. They earned it, as simple as that. Now, the $1 million team is special because my son was on it.
Okay.
And it was a group, again, of about 23 seniors who had $1 million of accepted scholarships, not offered scholarships, accepted scholarships. One of them was Barrett Robinson, who won the award called the Wendy's High School Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. So that's I've had a very fortunate coaching career in that I have the high school Heisman Trophy winner, Barrett Robinson. I got to be in New York City, sit in the 3rd row, the Heisman Trophy winner on national TV. I had the National Defensive Player of the Year when I was at Stebbins High School, Brent White, who went on to Michigan, University of Michigan, and then pro, and voted the top defensive player in the high school. And then as an athletic director, I had the women's basketball high school player of the year in Tamika Williams. So, you know, you talk about things that, you know, coaches say, well, you know, boy, just one thing happened to me. So we rub up against greatness. I had 3 of them.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had 9 of those guys get full football scholarships. Barrett Robinson, who won the high school, turned down his football scholarships, had football scholarships at every school in the country. And I'll tell Barrett's story because it's so unique. Barrett Robinson, from the time he was a freshman, came in, and when the freshmen come in, we always tell them this. We said, hold out your right hand, this is what's right. Hold out your left hand, this is what's wrong. Said, you are going to have decisions all your life, and you think you can live in the middle. But the more you live, and no one's perfect. No one's always in the right hand, always in the left hand. But the more you can make decisions in the right hand, happier, more successful, more popular person you're going to be. Well, he came up to me and said, Coach Place, I have a goal in my life, and in order to achieve that goal, I have to be perfect. I have to always live in the right hand. I said, Barrett, don't do that. I said, you're unexpected. And he made a couple of mistakes along the road, which I'm fortunate that he did. That's hard to believe to say that. But Barrett Robbins' system was this. He would get up every morning at 3:30, study until 6:30, so it was fresh in his mind. And he did that every day for 4 years in high school. Wow. He did it every day for 4 years in college. every day for 4 years in medical school, every day for the entire time of his internship, his residency. And, you know, the goal that he had, he said, Coach, I have to do that. He said, college football doesn't fit into my plan. Barrett Robinson today, is U.S. News and World Report has him ranked as one of the top 5 high-risk prenatal surgeons in the world.
Wow.
He's up in Chicago, Illinois. A high-risk prenatal surgeon is this. A couple goes to their family doctor here in Richmond, Indiana, Dayton, Ohio, and said, the doctor says, you're going to lose the baby. We can't keep it. But there's a group of doctors up in Chicago, Illinois that handle high-risk prenatal surgeries, and maybe they can help you, and that's what he does. And so
It's amazing.
So you talk about choosing something over football. But he was part of that. Now, he had a full scholarship everywhere in the country for football and academics, and ended up going undergraduate to Morehouse, graduate Duke, residency at Harvard, and then Northwestern to finish up his internship.
Wow.
The neat thing is that $1 million team came back for a reunion, and what they're doing in their careers now and their lives is just amazing. My son is as part of that team. It was really neat. So that team was special because of many, many reasons.
Yeah, just a great group of men.
Yeah, it was. And a lot of other great teams, a lot of great players,
Right.
great people. You know, I talk about one guy. So, and I'm rambling here. So you talk about the character card and the state championship team. So we go to Hamilton, and the first year we go, I think, 3-7, which was considered a tremendous role. I had a junior linebacker on the team named Denikos Allen. Came in my office, knocks on the door after the season, says, Coach, we're going to state tournament next year. I said, now remember, with this team, we won 4 games in 3 years. State tournament, back then it was still 8. And so it was pretty much of a challenge. He said, Coach, you can forget about the character card. I said, what do you mean, Denikos? He said, I'll do it. I said, oh. And Denikos is a tough guy. I'll tell you what Denikos ended up. He ended up the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year at Michigan State, first-team All-American, going down to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, lives with his family in Hamilton now, very successful. But he says, Coach, I'll handle everything. He said, 80% of our players live in the same neighborhood I do. It's called the Second Ward in Hamilton. He said, in school and out of school, he said, if anybody doesn't do what's on that card, I will beat their... And you know what the next word was. I said, well, Nikos, I can't confirm violence. I'm a coach. He said, Coach, you don't have to confirm anything. He said, I will take this team and I will do everything. 7-3. We did not make the playoffs, which broke his heart. We lost 6-3 to Coleraine, who was really a power. Kerry Combs, UD guy. And we lost to Moeller. That was one of our other losses. It was really good. But you talk about the effect of one young man can have on a team, a tremendous leader, and then he went on and did the same thing at Michigan State too.
Yeah, but what a testament to you.
Well,
to hear these stories of, the junior and senior leadership or the senior leadership coming to your office and say, hey, we got this. I mean, what a testament as a coach, what the goals and the vision that you had as a man to get those kids to buy in. And then when it actually happens, I mean, how rewarding is that?
2 things. Number one, I never really looked at it that way. The way I look at it is those are special kids.
Absolutely.
I've had some special kids just dumped in Brent White, all the Barrett Robinson, Tamika Williams. I was just the AD. I've had some special people dumped into my lap. I don't know what it was, that maybe I was born on the right star or something like that, but it's very special people, and very rewarding. But you're right to see it. And you know what? I just told stories about Barrett and Tamika and Denikos, but I could tell you a story about a young man that played special teams and is now a hand doctor down in Cincinnati, who I could tell you just as many great stories about those kind of kids too. And he was a special teams player. But yet his own success and the way the path he traveled to that success was just as important. One thing, Dan and Bennett, I mentioned this earlier, and I really believe it. I think it's the key to being not only a good coach, but good at anything you want. Everybody has a story. If I can find time and the ability to sit down and get a young man and say, tell me your story. What's going on with you? I've never had a problem with a player if I knew their story. If I knew their story, we always had a good relationship because I could always say, well, that makes sense. So I'll give you an example of that. I'm coaching at Hamilton, and we went in, and they were sick of losing. So Hamilton was one of the easiest jobs I ever had. They were sick of being disrespected, no respect in the community. They were so hungry to do things right that it was the easiest coaching job I ever had. And I love the Big Blue. But we went in and we gave them their character cards, and I said, okay, I'm going to challenge you for something. They had demerits and detentions. You got a demerit, you got enough demerits, you got a detention. Let's not have one demerit. Said, you guys you're going to go from the worst players in the school to the best players in the school, best people in the school because of the character card. As simple as that. Well, we went 9 weeks of not a demerit in the whole school, not on the team. I'm sitting in my office. No, I'm sorry, 7 weeks. I'm sitting in my office, and a young man comes flying in my office, and he's crying. And the two security guards, Jimmy Phillips and Harry Edwards, come flying after him. And I said, guys, can I talk to him for a minute? And he's crying. I said, well, what's going on? He said, I just hit somebody in the restroom. I just punched a guy. I said, Coach, I broke the streak. The team's going to be let down. You're going to be disappointed in me. And he's crying, and he's yelling and yelling. And this relates to know the story. And I said, he started to tell me, I said, listen, you're telling me what happened. Somebody said something about your sister. You got mad. You punched him. Now I'm going to tell you what's happened. You're going to leave here. You're going to go up to the assistant principal's office. You're going to get suspended for 2 weeks. You're off the team for 2 weeks. But when you come back, I'm going to love you even more than when you left because of this. And I said, now tell me what set you off? Why did you hit the kid really? He said, Coach, you've taken me home after practice some nights. You know my story. My mom goes to the bars 3 or 4 nights a week. She brings home a different guy. She said, my sister's 14 years old. I can't sleep at night. I got to have one eye on my sister's room knowing these degenerates in my house. He said, I come to school so angry that, Coach, I can't handle anything. He said something to my sister, and he said, I hit him before I even thought about the consequences of being on the team. And that's an example of the difference between what happened and tell me what's really going on. Tell me your story. Tell me the story behind that, as simple as that. And the other thing that I used to like to tell the students was this. I always ask students, listen, tell me what's keeping you from. I know what's happening. You're not doing your homework. You're not doing respectful. You're not working hard in football. You're not getting along with your family. Tell me what's keeping you from doing that, as simple as that. I'm on a roll here, Dan, and I'm going to tell you this also. About 30 years ago, I figured a system that really worked for me. So we would have a kickoff meeting in May, and I would have the players fill out an information sheet, and they fill name, height, weight, position, and all that. And then down at the bottom, I had 2 questions. Where do you want to be 20 years from now, and what's going to keep you from getting there? So from that time on, I never fought with a student. I never disciplined. I never argued. I never gave them lectures. So what would happen was, no matter where I coached, so I coached at CJ, where, fairly affluent kids, diverse school, but affluent. Coached at Beaver Creek was affluent. I coached at Hamilton, Middletown, Withrow, and Ponitz, all urban school districts. Yeah. Every player I had filled that form out exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. Where do you want to be 20 years from now? I want to have a nice life, live in a nice neighborhood. About 90% of them, 95% want to have a nice wife. Not all of them want to be married. I want to have a nice job, nice friends, nice neighborhood. The word nice, I just want a nice life. That's what every kid wants. Yeah. The problem is they got different obstacles to get there. You go into inner city school, the kids have got massive obstacles to overcome to do that. And then number 2, what's going to keep you from that? So I would take that sheet though and put it put 3 holes in it, put it in a binder. A young man would get in trouble, whatever, in school or football. I'd call him in, I'd turn to his page and go, are these still your goals? Is this where you want to go? Yeah, Coach, it is. Is the way you're acting going to get you there or not get me there? He'd say, not get me there, Coach. I said, fill in the blanks. He said, you're right. I'm going to go apologize to the teacher. I'm going to start trying to do it. So I never fought with students. Once I found that system, but the whole thing revolves around this. I knew his story. I knew where he wanted to go, wanted to be. So that's the key to the whole success, is that kind of relationship, and know the players, win the players, simple as that.
Well, and I try to have those conversations with my kids if they come home, at whatever age as they've been growing up, and they say, well, Susie did this or Johnny did this. I'll say, well, let's look at this. Yeah. What do they go home to?
Exactly.
Some of these kids go home and they don't, the only meal they get is when they come to school. So you have to take a step back and not just look at the action, or whatever they said or whatever they did, but why, what are they dealing with at home? And I think that's so important. And it's amazing to hear that coming from a man who's coached probably thousands of young men, and knowing the stories, and I'm super impressed how you know all these names from all these schools, even the security guards.
Those are my guys.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
guys.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it is a testament to you. You talk about like Tamika Williams and all these special players and how they were put in your lap.
Yeah.
I would guarantee if they were sitting here today, they would say the same thing about you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that you were put in their lap.
It's an opportunity. The rewards are great. One thing about coaching is sometimes you get a little more credit than you deserve. You think about social workers and you think about people that are doing those kind of jobs. I was winning football games, and so, a lot of self-reward out of that. So, but it's a great profession, but it's an opportunity. If all you want to do is win football games, you're missing that opportunity to have those relationships and that you had then and you continue to have. Those kids stay in contact with you and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fun.
Well, as we try to land this plane, which I hate to do, we could probably go on for a couple hours here. Do you have any closing thoughts or words of wisdom or advice? I mean, you've spewed out all kinds of amazing words today, but is there a quote or a piece of advice someone has given you that you carry with you throughout your life, and every day you go back to and you think, okay, this is why I do what I do?
Well, there's probably 30 of them I could give you. So I'm just going to pick one randomly out of anywhere. And that's something from a soul song back in the 1960s, okay? And the line goes like this: anyone or anything, anyone you once loved a lot, you'll always love a little. And that's something that I believe in, that, I love my teams that I've coached. I love my college. I love my college teammates. I love my friends from college. Quite obviously at the top of that list is my family that I love a lot. But I think that anyone that you've loved a lot, you always love a little. So keep all those relationships all your life. Don't let relationships be a temporary thing where this person was in my life for a short window and then they're out of it. I'd like to think all those relationships are still part of me. And it's been a very rewarding life for me, and I keep every aspect of those alive today.
What awesome advice. Ben, you got anything to add?
I got a lot. I'm just
well, thanks, guys.
trying to process everything. One of the big things, you kept going back about the character card. Can you explain the character card a little bit more? I mean, I know that every player got it. Did it have like rules or like commandments or something on there?
We'll run out of time, but basically it has 8 panels on it. But one of the panels is 10 reasons to 10 keys to a good attitude. And what we did there is we took the team on team retreat. We'd take a summer practice and not go on a retreat. We'd go on a retreat, and each one of those would be a 20-minute talk by me telling you this is what a good attitude is. So an example is, will you work hard to achieve your goals? So quite obviously, if you're going to have a good attitude, you got to work hard. Just as simple as that. As simple as that. Another one is, where do you go in time of crisis? So when I was at CJ, it said, what's the role of God in your life? But when I was in public school, you can teach values in public schools just the same as that. I taught everyone, you got to have somewhere to go when you're in time of crisis and have a good time. So 10 keys to a good attitude. Then the other panel was 10 reasons why you play football, okay? So I really believe this: if you know the why, the how will happen. In other words, this is why I'm playing football. This is why I'm in business. This is why I'm a family man. The how will happen. But if you don't know the why, if you don't know where you're going, that's where you're going to end up. You're going to end up nowhere. So with those, we had 10 two-a-days. At the end of the two-a-day, I would sit down and say, okay, this is why you're doing this. This is why you're a football player. Be part of a team, pride, so on. There was 10 different things. So that's what's on the character card. And in theory, we had them printed.
Yeah.
And what they did was it also had a goals section on it. And each week they would fill out 4 goals. And on Monday, I would check their goals for that week. And we would. The one thing it did there was it gave me a chance every week to have a one-on-one with every one of my players. So I looked at every player's goal card every week, and then we give them a new card. So in theory, they carried in there, they didn't, but in theory, they called in their wallet 724. So that was the goal card, but that was the basis of our whole program. We didn't do anything. We didn't do posters. We didn't do incentives. We didn't do anything. We did one thing, character card. And we said, if you buy into this, we'll have a successful season. If you don't buy into it, we won't have a successful season. So it was real simple.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Very easy.
Yeah, Coach Place, I can't thank you enough for.
Well, I loved it, man. I loved coming over. You guys are good guys. This is cool. Big Paulie Conradson. We talked about him.
Yeah.
Paulie was All-American at UD.
Yep.
He's now an All-American father. He's an All-American businessman, but he's one of your guys.
He is.
I got to know Brad Van Fleet, and so the UD family continues.
It does. Big Paul, I've reached out to him because I want him to tell his story.
Oh, he'd be great. Love Big Paulie.
Paulie was he's a mountain of a man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's about 6'4". He was an offensive tackle at Dayton, and I was a freshman when he was a junior, and so I was on the scout team, so I went against Paulie every day, and we had some battles.
Well,
he won most of them. Yeah. But he was a heck of a player, and he's a heck of a man. So we'll get him on.
That goes back to the other thing. Anything you or anyone you once loved a lot, you always love a little.
That's right.
You guys still got that relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Jeremy Jossetti. And
absolutely. All those guys up in Milwaukee.
I've had a tremendous time, guys. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah, we appreciate you. And everybody, I don't know how you can't be inspired by Coach Place and his words. There's no doubt the love, the caring, the character that he has for all of the people in his life, not just the kids that he's coached, but his family, and anyone he comes into contact with is truly a testament to you as a man. So we appreciate you. Everybody go out, like, share, subscribe, all those fun things. Thank you for listening to the Be Tempered podcast. Go out and be tempered.
Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Catron's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Catron's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Catron's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636, locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Catron's Glass, the clear choice.